President Obama reluctantly accepted the resignation of Eric Shinseki today. Of course, Eric Shinseki, who is the Veteran Affairs Secretary, has resigned in the wake of this VA scandal. Basically, they were falsifying waiting lists. Hundreds of people that were supposed to be admitted to hospitals weren't being. So we've got some video of the president today.
Last week I said that if we found misconduct, it would be punished, and I meant it. Secretary Shinseki has now begun the process of firing many of the people responsible, including senior leaders at the Phoenix VA. This morning, I think some of you also heard Rick take a truly remarkable action. In public remarks, he took responsibility for the conduct of those facilities and apologized to his fellow veterans and to the American people. And a few minutes ago, Secretary Shinseki offered me his own resignation. With considerable regret, I accepted.
He accepted it. What a shocker.
Do they ever not accept it? I guess once in a while,
yes, they
right?
do not accept them sometimes. And
Yeah.
certainly during Watergate, they didn't accept some of the, there was the massacre, so that there were some under secretaries whose resignations weren't accepted. But first of all, the biggest headline out of this is Rick. Who knew that he was Rick Shinseki?
Yeah. I had to look again. Wait, it's Eric, right? But Rick, yeah.
So
it's good to know they're on that level.
Right. General Shinseki, Secretary Shinseki, Eric, no, Rick.
Yeah.
Ricky, yeah. Well, so
at least he didn't call him Polak.
I imagine that in the minds of I'd imagine in the minds of a lot of people, they think the problems at the VA have now been solved. I mean, literally, that in this fire the coach mentality that so many people take, you being a big sportsman, you know that they think that immediately something goes wrong, fire the person in charge.
Yeah.
And I, listen, I was not in favor of Shinseki resigning or being fired. I think that he's the person he's the secretary, so he's there to fix a problem when there's a problem.
Right.
This is a decades-old issue.
So just to be clear, because I kind of glossed over what exactly is going on here. I mean, they were literally falsifying records so that veterans that were supposed to be getting care in just a couple days were literally waiting something like 120 days.
And these were supervisors in the local VAs. And I think what makes this story so big is because these indecorous things have been happening in VAs around the country, is that so many of these things are happening in so many places that local news is covering these stories. So the Phoenix news has been all over this story. The Albuquerque news all over that story. It's happening in Pennsylvania. It's happening in Georgia and Florida. So you're seeing it happen, and local news is covering it. So it's not one story about the VA that can be dispensed with. It's 25 stories a day from all over the country happening.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the part that I wanted to talk about, because President Obama seems incredibly annoyed. Doesn't he seem extremely annoyed that it got to this point? I mean, he seemed sort of angry there. I thought the way he said, Rick, was sort of like, this is my guy, and now he's out. So I sense that he's taking this very personally.
I don't know about that, but I do know that Eric Shinseki has been the head of the VA since President Obama became president, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so, and that was kind of like his way to pay back to Shinseki, who told the truth about the Iraq War and got fired for telling the truth about the Iraq War in front of Congress, which is that we were going to need hundreds of thousands of soldiers, not the small footprint that Rumsfeld was saying. So that was Barack Obama's way to go, hey, we're kind of stick the thumb in the eye of the Bush administration, who, by the way, this problem started under the Bush administration, the problem of having two different sets of books. Right. So in 2005, the information was presented to President Bush's administration that this was happening, that what they were keeping one set of books that said, look, we're getting their appointments are down under 30 days. But then the other set of books, which was the real set, showed 120 days, but they would only show you those books. So this came to light in 2005. President Bush's administration completely ignored it. So when Shinseki came into office, this problem was still happening. It was happening when he got into office. And here we are now 6 years later, still happening. And he acts like he just became aware of it. That's the definition of incompetence management. So he has to go. Right? So we have to get someone else in there because we've known about this problem since 2005, and now he's pretending like he just found out about it. But if he didn't know about it, he's derelict in his duty.
But you think it comes down to the local guys, right?
I think it comes down to the local guys. I think it goes way back. I love to sit here and blame George W. Bush for for them being out of peanut butter at Ralph's, but I think this goes back further than Bush, and this dysfunction in the way the local VA operates with virtual autonomy it's such a big bureaucracy that they operate with virtual autonomy from the VA in Washington, that is the problem. And yeah, Shinseki hasn't solved it. No VA secretary has solved this. This is a big problem, but it's not necessarily like if the problem comes to light, don't you want somebody capable of solving a problem to be there to solve the problem?
Of course, yes.
And,
I think
and getting rid, you strip a Band-Aid off and then everybody goes back to work tomorrow. They come in Monday and there's another fish to fry. We forget about the VA. If Eric Shinseki is still, Rick Shinseki is still in his job, he is the person most admonished to do something about this. Now that he's gone, the next person comes in. Yeah, it's a task, but then they're the new secretary.
So then what's Obama's angle? Because I think you're both making a good point, but then so Obama's just doing this because maybe he doesn't want to waste political capital at this point to keep him around?
I think that at a certain point it does become a distraction. A president doesn't want distractions. And even today, and we'll get to this later, Jay Carney stepping down, that's a distraction from the distraction.
Yeah.
And so I think it becomes a lot about distraction for the president. I think, and he said it, if Sebelius had been fired after the healthcare rollout, that would have been a bigger distraction than the rollout itself. Mm-hmm. I don't agree that Shinseki should have gone. I see why the president's okay with it and why other people thought that he should have gone, but especially people running for office.